All right, all right. So I know a lot of people like to listen to the recorded versions of these, so I know we'll have people showing up in between and tuning in later. But let's get started. So we are here for Episode 7 of the Hideout. We've got another great panel with really awesome guests to talk about the impact of Web3 technology and gaming. So obviously a topic that's broad and can touch a lot of things. And so I think we'll get into some interesting questions, and who knows what rabbit holes we'll go down this time. But we're joined by a few very special guests, kind of from different areas of the Web3 gaming space. First, we have Sam from Mazer Gaming, and we'll let everybody introduce themselves in a minute, but I'm happy to have Mazer Gaming here for the first time. That's going to be awesome to get their perspective, a little bit different perspective than us on the development side. They're going to be able to provide, the kind of the professional gaming team angle on things. And then we have Ralph from Nine Lives Arena, another really awesome high fidelity gaming project underway and under development. I've gotten the chance to kind of check out some of the stuff they're doing, so I'm excited to hear from them. Then, as always, we've got Spencer on the Apollo account, and we've got Josh, our lead producer at Apollo, on his account. That's Cannaborn. So if we want to take a minute and introduce yourselves and what you're working on, your projects, your team, why don't we start with Sam from Mazer?
Awesome. How's it going, everyone? Thanks for having me on here. And I'm excited to talk some Web3. Being in an esports background, I started Mazer Gaming in 2014. So we've been around for a bit. Traditionally, what we are is an esports organization. And, we've had professional teams in games like Call of Duty, Fortnite, Gears of War, Super Smash Bros, Pokemon Go, League of Legends, you name it, pretty much. We've been involved with a lot of these big titles over the years. And as an organization, we've been getting into the Web3 space. We kind of we first got into blockchain and crypto at the beginning of 2018. And it initially started with just some ideas around tokens and, hosting some events. But now as an organization, we're more focused towards, the Web3 gaming space. And we've been working with a lot of different games. For example, we just hosted a $10,000 tournament with Undead Blocks at the beginning of September. We're working with Big Time right now to host an event. So we're doing a lot of awesome esports tournaments. And one of our main goals is to really be able to bridge the gap between Web 2 and Web 3. And we do that a lot through our events, through our different esports players, and through our creators as well. We have around 55 different Twitch streamers, some pretty big creators over on Twitch that are under our organization. And, we've been doing some big things with them recently.
Amazing. Really, really exciting to get your perspective on some of these topics, as we often have a lot of projects on here, and not often enough do we get kind of the other side of things. And you guys are in an awesome position because you're doing both, right? You're putting together, you're building, you're developing, but you also have this community of content creators that are really skilled in exactly what we're trying to achieve, and that's building great games that people want to show people and play and have fun with. So definitely excited to have you guys on. Ralph, why don't you tell us a little bit about Nine Lives and yourself and what you guys are building?
Ralph, it looks like you're muted if you're speaking right now.
Yeah, I was muted. Okay, just a quick follow-up on Sam. Really excited to hear what he was saying, because we're building an esports game, and it's good to see that they are already in this space and excited about it as well. And me personally, I'm a hardcore gamer. I have been playing games since 40 years now, so I'm one of the older gamers. But the average gamer now is like 35, so that makes me feel better. But I'm also a game developer since 30 years now, and I've worked and lived in 8 different countries. I have worked for some of the big publishers in the past, And I have most of the time worked as a producer and running game development teams. And yeah, in 2015, the idea was born to make our own studio and create our own game. And what I'm most passionate about is competitive fantasy PvP. And that's what we're building. So I've played like Ultima Online starting in 1998, and it had already online PvP, and all the MMORPGs had online PvP as a feature, and all the Souls games out there like Dark Souls, Demon Souls, and the latest Elden Ring, they feature fantasy RPG PvP, right? And in all of these games, you could always duel other players 1v1, but it was never the core feature. There was never a core experience about 1v1 dueling, because most of these games are also class-based, right? So like World of Warcraft, they introduced arenas later, but it's 3v3, 5v5, 2v2, but they never did 1v1 because it's not balanced. They have a class-based system. So we built a game with the focus on around 1v1 PvP, and the whole thing, you know, level up your character, and you min max your spells, stats, equipments, the whole RPG around it, and you're trying to find the most interesting combination for your character to be competitive in 1v1 against other players. And you can play in trainings arena against other players until you have the best possible character. And then you can move on to ranked arenas. And as the name says, 9 Lives Arena, it's limited to 9 lives. It's permadeath, right? So every fight counts. It's high risk, high reward. We really wanted to bring the tension to the fights to make it real fun. And, you know, you can make it really rewarding if every fight matters. And our permadeath is also not the most, it's very complex, right? So when you die, it's not over. Death in 9 Lives Arena is just the beginning. So you become a spirit, and as a spirit, you can still play once you lost your 9 lives, but spirits play different dynamics. You hunt for lives. You essentially become a life hunter with the hope to resurrect as an immortal, and immortals then, if you ever manage that, will play completely different again. So, and yeah, just to give you a quick overview of that, it's a PvP focused competitive online RPG. And then to balance it out, you have an Oogie. It's a Tamagotchi on steroids. And Oogies work for you. They are your personal employee. So if you're offline, he's still working for you. So you can tell your Oogie, okay, go lumberjacking. And then you go to bed. The next morning you wake up and he has lots of different votes for you, and maybe some other stuff, random stuff that he got while he was out there doing that for you. Or you send him mining. But the thing is, all the grinding that we have done in so many games in the past, in our game, Oogie takes care of that. So it's a mix of, you know, you being engaged and focused more on combat, but you have your little helper and you can interact with him, and he's Tamagotchi on steroids that you can also stay in touch with when you're away from the game.
Amazing. No, it sounds awesome. And I was looking at the website, and there's really cool. You have some really cool trailer footage and teasing some really great, what looks like gameplay footage. So excited to see how that turns out and dive in to some of these topics. And we also have our producer Josh. So Josh, why don't you introduce yourself and also give those who may not be as familiar with Satoshiverse and Satoshi's Legions just a quick overview of what we're building.
Yeah, hey everybody. Quick background of mine. I came into this space from the traditional video game space, working with companies like 2K Games, Sega, and when I came into this space a few years ago, you know, just this what this technology could provide for gaming was just too exciting for me. And, you know, I'll get into that a bit later, but that's what brings me here. And with Satoshiverse, we're bringing in elements, you know, some of the classic stuff that everybody would expect, that was really exciting for us, such as ownership of your own items and, you know, whether it be your avatar or resources, and some other things that we're exploring for the future that I won't jump into just yet. But Satoshiverse itself is a single player game right now. It's a premium, like a high quality action arcade type of game. It's third person action RPG, has RPG elements, but also something some people may be familiar with called roguelike elements. And you're battling your way through the outskirts and basically defeating various enemies and leveling up your character and finding loot and drops and crafting items and just some of the stuff that we have done in traditional games and some things that we were always missing. We're bringing that to the table now, and that's only possible with Web3 technology.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. And last but not least, Spencer, why don't you introduce yourself and then take it away?
Hey, my name is Spencer. I work with Paulo Entertainment. Been working with the company for about 1.5 years now, focusing more on the business development and partnership side of things. And Josh, your last point there is a great lead into my first question. So this is going to be a question that I open up to everyone. And Nick, why don't you start us off? What are some of the things about Web3 gaming that weren't possible in Web2 gaming?
And I'm sure we'll touch on this a lot. There's possible is a tough term, right? I think in Web2 gaming, what you saw was centralization of ownership, right? Everything that happened within an ecosystem. And I think what Web3 gaming does is it opens that up, right? You can have this decentralized ownership of in-game assets with the potential for things like interoperability, things like real true ownership, but not just in the means of owning something, but also in the means of exchanging it, right? So you can tap into all of the marketplace layers and economic layers and things like royalties that Web3 ownership provides for, digital assets generally. I think will provide and will be able to be something that can be, really leveraged to create new experiences within the Web3 gaming space. So I'm sure everyone else will have deeper thoughts on that. So that'll be where I wrap that one up.
Yeah. Sam, why don't you go next?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I've been in gaming for so long. Just the idea of being able to own your assets is amazing to me. I think of a game like, I guess more recently, like Fortnite. People spent thousands, tens of thousands of dollars for the crazy people on their Fortnite skins, and the fact that you're now able, obviously, other games and different areas of the gaming world, with Web3, being able to sell your assets, trade them to a friend, and use them for all of these unique opportunities. For some games, you kind of get the assets first, and then it's like, hey, you could also use this in our game that we have. Just having that as a feature is an amazing thing, and I think it gives people a better opportunity to spend more money in a game without really having to worry as much, because people who used to play Fortnite in 2018, 2019, now they don't even touch the game, and they have thousands of dollars worth of skins just sitting in the game collecting dust. Being able to do something with those assets is amazing, and that's kind of what's going to lead the way in the space.
Awesome. What do you got for us, Ralph?
Yeah, I have to agree with both of them. I mean, that's the most crucial part for me as a gamer, right? I get to own the stuff I buy. And if you look at the history of microtransactions, there have always been, some negativity around ingoing microtransaction. And part of that is that they didn't understand that they had to spend extra money, but that money was gone, right? That money was spent, and it was a money sink, and they never truly owned it, right? And it only really starts to make sense to sell things to players now, in my mind, with Web3 and NFTs, where the player gets to own what he buys additionally to the game, right? It's optional. He doesn't have to buy it. He can just buy the game and play it. But if he chooses to buy something additionally, later on, when he moves on to another game, he has the opportunity to sell it to somebody else, right? And that's exciting. And, imagine all the the games you were passionate about in the past, right? I have a long history of gaming. If I would own some items from Dungeon Master back in the day on the Atari ST or the Bard's Tale, I probably would never sell it. I would just keep it, right? just as, something you remember, like you keep the old boxes back in the day from those old games that you were passionate about. And sometimes they came with a gimmick, right? They had a clothes map, like Ultima Online came with a map or a little sticker, right? Items that you owned, and you would keep them. And some people sold those items on eBay, right? And NFTs fill that space. You have the ownership. You get excited of what you own, and you either collect it, or one day it funds for you to move on and buy another game, right? So it's a win-win for the gamers. And once the gamers understand that, they will think twice about playing a game and buying an item that they don't own, right? You would never buy a skin when you can play a similar game where you can buy a skin and own it, right? So I think once this shift happens, it's going to be massive. It's going to be absolute game changing.
Great, thank you. Josh?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of expand on what I started to touch on before. I mean, early on, that was what was primarily exciting for me. I mean, coming from not just playing video games, but even playing games in the traditional space, like with Magic the Gathering, the fact that I could both own something collectible and play with it at the same time, and it really didn't fully exist in the video game space. And so seeing this was the initial spark. But I mean, there's so much more that this technology is bringing in terms of, interoperability, for example. I mean, and then some of these future things that we're not even seeing yet, that's not ready because, it's like the metaverse is huge. But I think a building block of the metaverse is going to be these games that integrate that technology, and then those experiences get integrated, piece by piece into the metaverse, and it's just going to be this immense, limitless universe that uses that tech. So I mean, there's really a lot of things to be excited for with this, and I think all of these things that we're realizing now early on, I wasn't even thinking about the metaverse 2 years ago, for example. There's going to be something else that nobody's even thinking of now. And, just hearing about cool, creative ways of using the technology, like with 9 Lives, I mean, that sounds awesome. And so more and more people are going to come up with new and unique things like that really just weren't possible in a traditional space, because we have decentralized communities, decentralized building, decentralized tournaments, ways for people to kind of do things without this centralized intermediary who is kind of controlling, what you get to play with and when, and, if they could just pull the rug out from under you and, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's exciting.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, I love that you brought up interoperability there. That's always been one of the things that's resonated with me a lot when it comes to Web3 gaming, and the idea that you could potentially invest in a game and invest in its assets, and even if that game is to not do super well in Shutter, a different game could potentially pick up those assets and decide to support them, and you can still have value for them, potentially within multiple games, not even within just one. So I think there's a lot of value and a lot of power with that. So the next question I'm also going to open up to everyone. So what are some of the best applications of Web3 gaming that you've seen to date? And kind of more specifically, Web3 technology within games that you've seen to date. I'll throw it back
I can
to...
start off if you want.
Hey, go for it.
So, for me, not just games, but generally, I think what I've seen is just a big access point for content creators, right? For artists, for developers. And so one of the things that I've seen, which kind of touches on this idea of interoperability, is whether it's in metaverses or games, seeing outside content, things that indie developers or whatnot are building, then implemented into a game. And so I think, Somnium Space is a good example. It's more of a metaverse than a game, but you can take avatars from other content creators and upload those avatars in, as long as they meet certain standards. Same thing with Decentraland with his wearables, and Sandbox is a good example of just these gamified experiences that are being built by content creators. But then, I mean, in terms of, what Web3 is doing, I think that what excites me the most is these, RPG applications. And so, I think we're just starting to see RPGs come out that have fully, built-in Web3 NFT integration. I think that NFTs give you a lot of interesting potential to do things with the metadata and to make the metadata of an item more dynamic. And, so that's something we're playing with our RPG is actually, having items and the marketplace features that come with that are already built out for traits, seeing these early iterations right now of RPGs that are implementing NFTs, Big Time's doing a good job, and there's a few others that I've seen that are live. But it's early and it's exciting. It's exciting to see what different projects are doing with their in-game items that are a little bit unique, a little bit different than what you would have with a more centralized experience.
Thanks. Josh, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I guess right now a lot of what I'm working on and thinking of and is kind of like we're all working hard on this idea of the metaverse, but I do also really like to kind of look ahead and get into what other technologies could be, like where things could be in a couple of years. Like I was saying before, that there's things that aren't really coming out, and something that I think is also interesting that's just now maybe emerging, or there's maybe some ideas there that could be developed a bit further, is the convergence of all of this digital work and space that Web3 is bringing with the physical, and doing that, via things like NFC chips or, the Internet of Things, and because kind of, I think a big thing that's keeping people from getting interested, like a lot of people from getting interested in the metaverse, it may be because it's just fully digital. And I think as we start to really kind of converge that digital world with our real world, whether it's via AR, new hardware that we eventually get, I mean, I see all this stuff just converging, and so having physical board games or card games or things like that also connect with the Web3 technology that allow you to show those physical things off in a virtual space as well, and just having it just become more ubiquitous between the two, I think is something that a lot of people still aren't really thinking about a lot right now, or aren't really sure if it can be a thing. But in my mind personally, I just kind of see that as kind of another next step, another layer. So personally, that's exciting for me, for something that I'm just now seeing in the space, that I would like to explore further myself.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Sam, what applications have you seen that you've liked?
Yeah, definitely. I was going to touch on the physical aspects as well. For example, like this card game called Forsaken. It's a very simple concept, but just the idea that you could have a physical product, you could have your deck of cards, and you could play in person with someone, and then you could have those assets online, and they're worth something, and you could play the same game online on your computer as well. I think that just kind of brings a whole new level to gaming. And just being able to switch back and forth between like a physical mode or an online mode is really important. Another thing, like for us as an esports organization, we have tons of different merchandise products. Having like a Mazer Gaming jersey is a big thing when you're attending like an event, or if you're on stream or something like that. So yeah, being able to put those chips in the jersey, and then maybe if you buy a jersey, that could give you access to a certain skin in a game, or wearing the same jersey on one of your favorite characters in a Web3 game. I think that's really important, and it gives people a whole new meaning of buying this product, and it adds pretty easy value to something that you might be already selling, and it kind of opens it up to a whole new market. So yeah, I mean, I think that's awesome. And then I guess the third thing really is just with like event passes. I know there's a lot of different companies doing a lot of different things with ticketing and passes like that. But just being able to see the Web3 technology used for entering tournaments, or to just creating your ticket into something that's more than just, hey, you could get into this event and that's it. Seeing that kind of develop has been awesome. And I think it's going to be a big thing in the future with in-person events.
Thanks. And Ralph, can you close us out on this question?
Yeah, so I'm a bit biased. I'm the most excited about our utilities, but to be fair, I don't really have the time to follow up what everybody else is doing. There's so many games. So I also have to say, in general, I'm really excited of what we're going to see, what everybody else will do, because the utilities that people can attach to NFTs with games are super exciting. And yeah, I'm also excited about one thing, like what it can bring to the real world, like with board games or stuff, and the interoperability, like you have it work between games, stuff like that, the cooperations that game studios can do in between the games, and coming up with really interesting aspects there. It's going to be really exciting.
Hey, thanks for the response. So now we're going to get into some individual questions here. So the first individual question is to Sam at Mazer. So Mazer has been running a successful esports organization since 2014, prior to NFTs. How has blockchain gaming and Web3 changed the way that you guys operate your business?
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, the first thing has really just been like blockchain gaming has opened up so many new possibilities with hosting tournaments and, different structures for tournaments. In the past, we'd host a tournament, it'd be a basic bracket. People would compete against each other. But now, with the introduction of assets and, just different ways to kind of play these games because of the assets, I think it's created a whole new user experience for competing in a tournament. There's a lot more things you could do with the prize pool. There's a lot more things that you could do with the format. For example, like a game like Big Time, you could do like a scavenger hunt or something like that. So I think there's a lot of cool things that you could introduce with the prizes and just the whole idea around tournaments, which has been pretty cool. And then also just the way it kind of works with fan engagement has been pretty impactful with us. We've been working on a lot of interesting things that we can't really put out there yet, but there's a lot of things that you could do with passes, which is going to be pretty big for us as an organization, and providing kind of like a new fan experience. And I think Web3 has done a great job of just improving that in the world of esports for us.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm personally not a big gamer myself. I kind of grew up playing some games, but I haven't really in my adult life done a lot of gaming. So it's been very interesting to see how kind of these actual esports organizations have come together, and it's been like a really like a professional way of gaming. It's just so out of place for me, but it's one of the reasons I love doing these spaces. I love getting to hear different perspectives from all these different people, who are involved in building in the space. So yeah, thanks for the response.
Yeah.
So next question is to Ralph about Nine Lives Arena. So can you tell us a little bit more about Nine Lives and how you guys are integrating Web3 technology to create unique gaming experiences for your players?
Yeah, so we have a bunch of different utility NFTs. I touched on the two main ones. One is Blueprints and one is Oogies, which I think cover later. So in terms of Blueprints, a blueprint that you own as an NFT enables a crafting recipe for a helmet or a chest, armor chest piece or armor gloves or armor leg or a weapon design, right? So a weapon skin. So if you own one of our blueprint NFTs, it allows you inside the game to craft the skin as an NFT. So imagine you own a rare helmet blueprint. You're one of the few people in the world with the shared monopole to craft the skin of that helmet and sell it to other players. What we essentially do is we take players in on the monetization of skins. We don't sell skins. Like as developers or publishers, we don't sell skins. All the skins that will be sold for Nine Lives Arena are developed by players. Players craft the skins as NFTs and sell them to other players. So it's completely up to you to decide if you want to take part of the, creating and selling those or not. You don't have to, it's optional. And then, if you're interested, you can say, okay, I want to have a weapon design that I think is the best looking one or the best looking chest piece, or you go for a complete armor set that consists out of 5 pieces, and then you start crafting them in the game as NFTs and you sell them. And your bottleneck will be in-game resources, right? So, and that's where Oogie comes in, and because he's your personal employee and he gathers all the resources for you inside the game, even when you're offline. So as long as he's working, you have a thriving business. So you have to also keep care of your UGI, fish for him, but I think I touched on that whole UGI aspect later. But for the blueprints, we didn't decide to make skins, NFTs, and sell them to players. We decided to sell the license to craft NFT skins to players and let players craft all the skins as NFTs and sell them.
Nice. I really like that model. I mean, it really involves the players and it gets people feeling like they're, that they're involved in the game, and I guess not like they're being sold to, but like they're actually, involved in the player economy. So I'm sure your players really, really appreciate that. So next question is to Josh. What are some of the ways that the Satoshiverse is using Web3 technology in its game?
Yeah, I mean, right now, Satoshiverse is an arcade style game. And, our initial foray is basically to give player-owned avatars, player-owned items, player-owned resources, and with that, basically create a decentralized economy for the players as they're playing this game. But that's just really the first layer. I mean, beyond that, our goal is really to create gaming experiences that go beyond and leak into the metaverse, whatever that may be. So really just have a broader philosophy for interoperability, and then so that all the work or the play that you do within the game, right, of building up your avatar, whether you sell the avatar or buy somebody else's, make them more powerful, different in their new weapons, to bring that stuff into other games or other social spaces, via the broader metaverse. And, some other stuff that we've talked about that we're working on is, how to take this experience and make it, have some exposure to esports as well, whether it be, initially via leaderboards, so that, players can have kind of a decentralized way to compete and earn and, possibly compete against each other for some in-game assets or whatever that may be. But yeah, right now the primary use case is for provenance and player ownership and between these different items and avatars and resources.
Beautiful. Nick, do you have anything to add to that? Maybe some of the forward-looking stuff you guys are working on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're going to have a lot of opportunities as we move forward to be flexible, right? I think one of the things we're doing as a studio is building enough flexibility, especially within the broader Satoshiverse, that we can embrace changes in new technology, right? So we are thinking about VR and AR and new use cases for that same ownership layer NFT. And so what might be a Legionnaire avatar at some point, ownership could give you some AR thing in the future, or it could be, that, in several years, we've got the ability to actually interact with these things in a more physical world sort of way, or use them as skins for ourselves. And so I think what excites me the most about NFTs and the creative uses that you can have is that sense of permanence. You don't need to always sell a new product. You can kind of reward people who have been there from the beginning and who are most engaged, and provide layers of utility based on, engagement and ownership within a project. And I think there's something special to that. And I think as a founder, it's a dream, right? To be able to interact with your most loyal supporters in certain ways, and find ways to engage, with new people who want to come into the project, but also know, wow, these are people who have owned this NFT for 4 years, or they own 20 of these, and they really had faith in the project and were with us since the beginning. So we're always kind of looking, I think, to not just think about, okay, what can we do with the current utility, but also what are those new doors that are going to open. We one of the things that excited me about our studio and the work that they've been doing over the last 4 years is that we were building out metaverse architecture. We were doing VR installments of apartment buildings, and things that were really not Web3 focused at all, but that are going to have Web3 applications going into the future. And so my vision for the Satoshiverse is that it evolves as kind of this umbrella universe of IP within which, we have all these different applications and use cases. And I think that with what we're doing right now, we're fortunate to be in a position where we get to experiment and we get to, start playing with what metadata standards we can set and what interoperability standards will come to be. But I guess what excites me is that, we're a studio that's eager and young and wanting to embrace change and in a position to do so. And, my hope is that we'll continue to be able to do that going into the future.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nick. So next question is to Sam. So you guys, coming from a Web 2 environment, moving into Web 3, that transition must have been really, really interesting. So I'm curious what the reaction you've seen from traditional gamers has been when they've been giving Web 3 games a try.
Yeah, definitely. It's been like a process with everything. Initially, when we first got into Web3 gaming, some of the games that we were kind of throwing at some of our streamers and players, the games weren't great. They're like, okay, the idea is there, but I love the idea that you could own your assets. I love what the game is doing, but it looks like something that was made in like 10 minutes. So as that has kind of developed, and one of our close partners over the past couple of years has been Gala Games, and they've been launching some stuff on the Epic Games Store. And I think what really kind of put the games over the top is just the fact that they're up to par with a lot of other titles that have been coming out in the traditional gaming world. So now that there's playable games with unique ideas, storylines, and with the assets, I think it's made some of our streamers and players, really interested in a lot of the games that we've kind of given them the opportunity to play in tournaments. Like the Undead Blocks tournament that we did for Labor Day weekend was really cool. We had some of our players sign up and compete, and they were really just they were happy about the idea that these games are playable now. And I think as the industry develops, that's something that's only going to continue to get better. And on top of that, I think a lot of games that have already existed, and game developers are integrating Web3 more than they ever have now. So, just having all of these game studios working on a Web3 component is very valuable. But in terms of just what our streamers, what our players, what the reactions were, they're really excited to be a part of the growing industry that is Web3.
Very cool. Yeah, it's been very exciting to see this transition from really like pure like a monetary focus and the tokenomic focus into people actually developing games that people actually want to play and that are actually fun. Because I think that's really what's going to drive a lot of people into the space. So yeah, thanks for the response. Next question is to Ralph. So you already covered a little bit about the Oogies that are part of the Nine Lives Arena ecosystem. Is there anything else that you wanted to add about Oogies and how they fit into the game? Specifically kind of like the Web3 and NFT aspect of it, or really
Yes.
just anything else that you wanted to share about Nine Lives Arena?
Yeah, so Oogies are NFTs, and if you are a traditional gamer, you don't have to buy an Oogie NFT. You can use the in-game Oogie, right? He's ugly, he doesn't look special, and if you play the game for a year with your Oogie will level up and will become really good at everything he does, right? So the time you spend with the game, you cannot monetize on. If, however, you decided to get a blockchain Oogie NFT based, you will be able to sell that Oogie, whenever you decide. And if you sell a level 60 Oogie, that's a massive time commitment that you put in, because to get him to 60 right now, you need to go fishing 2 to 3 hours every day to have him to level 60 in 6 months, right? 6 months, 3 hours every day is a lot of time commitment. So another gamer might say, I want to have a really efficient Oogie from the get-go, and he's going to buy your level 60 Oogie when you sell it, right? So the fact that the NFT evolves and becomes more interesting over time, I think is a very good aspect. And they come in over 3 trillion different looks, right? Some people also and it's random which one you get. So some people just go by look, right? They want to have a cool looking Oogie compared to the one that looks pretty standard. They have up to 12 royal bloodlines, but which are very rare treat that make them look very special. But a 12 one has never dropped yet. And yeah, so if you have a very unique Oogie that you either like the looks or you like his rarity aspect, and you spend a lot of time playing Nine Lives Arena, he gains in value because he gets more efficient at crafting, he gets more efficient at resource gathering, at treasure hunting, and these things. And they have a personality, so they have anger management issues, and they have some other interesting stats. So each Oogie will, you will bond with them. They have facial animations, so you get emotional feedback. And what we're building is a mobile app that allows you to stay in touch with your Oogie while you're on the go. Basically, as I said earlier, Oogie works for you even when you're not playing the game. You feed your Oogie, you log out, you go to bed, or you go to a bar with friends. And now with the mobile app, you can quickly check on your Oogie's progress. Oh, you got all this gold. Or now, let me craft one of these helmets that needs gold ore, right? And then you have craft that and you switch the phone off. And next time you're at the PC again, then you can either use that helmet skin for yourself or you put it on the marketplace and sell it to another player. So Oogie is very interesting in that aspect that he works for you while you're offline and he gains value over time as an NFT. And eventually, people will be drawn to the aspect that this is something I can sell later, and I spend so much time with him. Why wouldn't I get it rather than having the in-game Oogie that I can never sell because it's account bound?
Makes sense. Yeah, I played RuneScape quite a bit growing up. That was really the game that I probably spent the most time grinding on. And I can't even tell you the number of hours that I spent, just grinding to chop down trees or fish or
exactly
whatever it was to build up my skill. Yeah, if I could have had a companion do that for me, wow, that would have changed the game quite yes. Literally.
On that note, I remember I played RuneScape a lot too. I remember sitting as a kid in bed in the old version of RuneScape, the classic version, where you would have to mine for the minerals. And I remember my dad having a projector, and like one of these early projectors where you could kind of control the remote with a button. And so where I'm going with this is that this projector remote basically let you control your computer with a little joystick and a button. But that was awesome for me because, I was an 8-year-old kid and I'm like, Dad, can I borrow that thing so that I can, sit in bed and just click this rock? And I remember watching TV.
That's awesome.
For 3 or 4 hours a night, just sitting there with my thumb clicking this projector button so that I could click the rock for 3 or 4 hours. So I needless to say, I'm very, very glad to hear that grind is going to be dealt with by Mr. Oogie instead of some kid in bed with a projector remote. So, or some these days, the devs can come up with all sorts of scripts and all that, but you take that out of the equation if you have a different way of doing it. So it's a creative solution to, I think, what a problem that some games have, which is
botting. Yeah, I mean, you're touching on the aspect of botting, right? Right. Bots are probably an online game, so we made bots a gameplay feature. So there's no point in having a bot because everybody already has a bot, which is Oogie. So like a problem, we turned into a feature. And I have the same history like you with RuneScape, right? I did it in Ultima Online, which was similar to RuneScape. And you could macro, right? You could either put a Coke bottle on one of the keys, so you would keep hitting that rock or something, right? While you were offline. So it was already a thing back then. I agree with you.
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's looking back at these times and even botting, I remember, there being these early bots that you could configure. And, it's crazy. It's crazy to see how that's developed. But also, I think back to the kind of the topic that we're talking about, how Web3, has changed the considerations there, right? Because now you have so much more of an incentive to bot, I think, because you have real value associated with a lot of these things and the ability to buy and sell them anonymously. I think when as a developer you're faced with that, there's a certain amount of oh shit, we need to think about this to another level, because it's no longer we can just ban your account and take away your assets or whatever it is. Like, these assets are decentralized, and no one's going to find you, if you're doing this. So the problem of botting, I think, is going to be a huge problem for games that don't think about these things. And so, as a Web3 game developer, I think you have to be ahead of the curve there, and thinking about these things. So whether it's, what you guys are doing by making the bots a feature, I think that's awesome. We have, programmatically generated levels with the roguelike component. So, our playthrough experience is going to be constantly changing and pretty difficult to bot, and, all the new anti-cheat mechanisms. But it's something you have to be thinking about, I think, constantly, when you're developing these games. And so right now, actually, I just want to segue into, every week that we do these hideout spaces, we like to reward the people who show up in person. And so every week we give away one of our avatars during the space. And so first, thank you everyone for showing up. And we still got a couple more questions and things we want to talk about after this. But I want to announce that the winner is of this week's 8 Mile Army avatar is Crypto Kitten. So Crypto Kitten, I think that's username Crypto Catus, is the winner of this week's avatar. So if you could just DM us your ETH address to our Twitter, we will get you your new 8 Mile Army avatar. So congratulations, and back to Spencer.
Great, thank you, Nick, and congrats to the winner. So next question, we're going to open up to everyone, and why don't we have Josh start us off here? So what are some of the biggest challenges with building a game that utilizes Web3 technology?
Yeah, I thought about this for a bit. I think for me, it's less of a tech challenge than it is of a challenge building Web3, but what that space encompasses, what that means to be in Web3. So, for me, it's like how important the public perception is, and how important public expectations are, earlier in the development process. Like I said, I came from a more traditional gaming space, so we would be working on a game covertly for 2 or 3 years before people even knew that it existed. And so we had time to develop assets, and from a PR perspective, and videos, and all that shiny stuff that people see when a game trailer is announced, or they see something at E3. So I think a lot of people outside of the industry typically don't understand that a lot of games are really in a rough shape for a long time, just until they're not. Like, it's just part of the process, and it's totally normal. I mean, that's part of just what goes into making a great game. It doesn't just appear out of nowhere. And I just think in this space, we just don't have as much freedom to develop covertly and show the game off, when it's ready and has had more time to polish. And we're doing something new, which I think is good, and that we're involving the player much sooner, and they're obviously invested in the process and the project much sooner. But that lack of experience in the industry for a lot of people, I think a lot of people expect things to move, quickly. And so, we're busting our ass getting some stuff out there, but I think we want to get them involved in the development, which is what I think is good about being able to bring them in earlier. So doing something new, it's something I've always wanted to do. I wanted to make a game live on Twitch or something, and with people, and, kind of do it, that early sort of thing. So that's something I'm excited to do, which is what we plan to do soon with our upcoming alpha release is, we just need to properly communicate exactly what that means to the people that are here waiting for us, and confident, and just waiting in the wings for us to get them more and more involved, and to help us all work together to make something awesome for the space. And I think that's maybe what, since things move so quickly here, that's why we see a lot of these games that just look like they were made in 3 days, but they were made in more than 3 days, but it's still a very short amount of time to make some of these basic blockchain games. And we want to do something bigger, and we want to do something better. And I think we're really on our way to do that. So I can't wait to get this in the hands of our people personally, and just start to get community feedback and involvement, and make this game. But yeah, I would say that's probably the most difficult thing from my perspective.
Thanks. How about you go, Sam? I know you're not necessarily building a Web3 game, but what are the challenges do you see in the space?
Yeah, and I mean, I think for the consumer, it's just more about having the game before the assets, if that makes sense. And I'm sure for a lot of companies, as you mentioned, pretty much like you have to build the game first, and as hard as that can be, game studios have spent what, like 10 years on games just to scrap it at the end. I think you really have to build a game that people want to play and then worry about, how you're going to utilize those assets. And, in the past, you could have a really cool idea on how you're going to integrate NFTs, on, how you're going to, just have them in the game. But if the game isn't playable, if it's not on a good like launcher, you don't have a good way for people to even access the game, your whole idea is pretty much ruined. So I think right now, in the past couple of years, that has been the biggest challenge for people with building a game that utilizes Web3 technology, because the technology could be great, but at the end of the day, people want to play your game, and you have to make it worthwhile for them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And I think it definitely makes a lot of sense for games that have funding, and
Yeah.
are kind of ready to start building. But for more indie games, I think selling assets ahead of time is a great way to fundraise for the game, to actually be able to fund the development as well.
Yeah.
Which I think is something that's really important for Web3 that wasn't really possible before. Ralph, why don't you go next?
Yeah, I think for a developer, the first thing is you have to figure out what ecosystem or which blockchain you want to put your assets on, right? And there's a lot of options out there, and you need to do your research and figure out which one you want to go. And for indie teams, it's a challenge also, because some of them they are not very comfortable to work on, and if you need solidity, you either you have to hire somebody that knows solidity, or whatever language, or you need to have money spent on for your programmers to learn and do all the coding themselves, right? Like in our case, we're using Unreal Engine, and our guys they work on C++, and of course they know a few other languages, but they weren't familiar with blockchain at all when we started. So and some of the ecosystems, they offer SDKs, and some of them even Unity, and some Unreal SDKs, software development kits. So it makes it easier and cheaper for indie teams to go with that ecosystem. But in general, I would say the big problem is not this at all. The bigger problem right now is educating the gamers, the public, what benefits true item ownership brings to them, because for some reason, the perception right now is pretty negative around NFTs, which is not really justified, because they just address microtransaction problems and make it better for gamers, and gives gamers much more benefits and power rather than in the old days. So I think it's all about getting that kind of, and then there were the first bunch of games like you guys touched on. They looked cheap. They didn't play well. And they were technically, for a gamer, it was tricky, because they needed to get a wallet on, they needed to get this and that. It was all not very user friendly either. So yeah, overcoming this initial hurdle of educating gamers and getting a better positive perception, but eventually that will all fall into place as well. I mean, I was early on in mobile gaming before the iPhone came out, and for Nokia, and it was funny enough, it was a new gaming platform. It was similar. The backlash was, oh, nobody's going to play on mobiles. It's going to drain your battery. Your phone is going to explode. Your phone gets so hot you burn yourself, and nobody wants to do it because you run out of battery too quick. And you had to face that, which is like, okay, but everybody plays mobile games now, and everybody will play NFT based games in the future, and then there's no more looking back. It's just something we have to face right now, and every developer and or you guys in esports, we just have to answer these questions and educate gamers. Basically, is the main thing.
Awesome, thanks. So we're getting to the top of the hour here. So Nick, why don't you answer that question for us and then close us out?
Yeah, definitely. And I think my views are very much in line with everybody else's. I think, for me, one of the biggest challenges is how early we are, right? And I think people keep saying we're early in the crypto space, but this is truly we're in a gap period, I would say, right? We're kind of in this period where a year ago, literally, NFTs started to become a thing, right? And people started thinking about all the different things that they could do with NFTs. And, I was fortunate, to be involved early on back in, 2017 with NFTs more on the legal side and just thinking about all the possibilities there. But I think last year, people really started to pay attention. And so you started to see outside studios come in, indie studios come in, and starts thinking about how can we use this new economic layer. But the reality is that unlike a PFP project, right? Unlike a DeFi solution, unlike, a marketplace, these things take years to do right. And that's just for a basic game, not implementing any kind of NFT technology, right? So there's really, I think there's kind of three categories. There's games that were already being built that decided to kind of recalculate and make NFTs part of what they're doing. And so I think those are the first games we're going to start to see like really high quality examples of. Then there were games that started, were basically games that grew out of IP that was NFT native or crypto native, similar to Satoshiverse, where we started planning everything right about that time, right? So we've been working on the game for about a year and a half, and we're getting, pretty deep in, approaching alpha, but there's still so much work to be done, so much left to do to have it be what we envision it being. And then you have, what I think will eventually be kind of these AAA games that, in my view, are going to wait until the market has started to turn. They're going to, kind of let us experiment, let us build the rails, let us build, the marketplaces and all these things, which really aren't built yet. And then you'll start to see these massive games potentially adopt the technology in one way or another and make it part of kind of their core ethos as an economic layer. And so I think there's still quite a bit of time before we as an industry are ready for NFTs within the space. And so I think, Ralph, I agree that we need to educate gamers, but I think a large part of that is going to be, gamers want to play fun games, which is kind of what Sam was saying. We need to actually build games that people enjoy playing regardless of the NFTs, and show them that NFTs are more of a back-end ownership layer that should become the standard and not necessarily the main feature of what makes the game, unique or cool or fun to play. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you need great IP, you need great content, you need something that people are really going to engage with. And then the NFTs almost become an auxiliary feature that we are, it's super important, right? The challenges are still there. Blockchain hurdles. I mean, that's the biggest one for me. Is it's not easy to get someone to play a blockchain game, especially with self custody. And I think now we're having custodial solutions coming out. There's third parties that are building, rails for those sorts of things. Crypto may not be necessary to exchange in certain games. So there's a lot of, rails being built out, similar to how I think, in 2018, when NFT art started first being sold, there really wasn't a lot of traction because of the hurdles to get in. But then you had, providers like Nifty Gateway and marketplaces like that started to break down some of those barriers through custodial solutions and bringing in bigger, thought leaders within the art space and bigger artists. And I think you're going to see a lot of the same things happening with NFT gaming. It's just going to happen much, much slower because it just takes so much longer to do right. And I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see the space continue to get better, but the challenge, I think, is going to be filling that gap, right? As independent studios that are truly, in large part, being, funded by either the communities or the investors or, just people who believe in the space. I think it's going to be a challenge for us to weather, 1, 2, 3, 4 years before we really start seeing any kind of mainstream adoption of the technology as a standard, right? And I think we have to be part of that. I think we have to lead that movement into that standard becoming a thing, and it won't happen unless you have Nine Lives Arena building a really cool game. What we're doing with Satoshiverse, what you guys are doing with Mazer, where you're actually getting gamers to come in and really see this. I think there's just so much there. So I think I ended up blabbing for a long time and we went over the hour, but I guess for me, I'm excited to keep doing these spaces and keep being inspired by all the great stuff that everybody else is doing, and looking forward to seeing how all this turns out within the space. And so, Ralph, thank you so much for joining. Sam, I may have dropped off, but if you're here, thank you so much for coming on. Of course, Josh and Spencer, thanks again for joining, and to all of you in the community who joined and come every week, thanks for joining. We'll be doing another one of these next week. If anyone on the panel has any last words that you want to say to everybody before we sign off, please feel free. But otherwise, thanks for another great conversation, and I'm looking forward to continuing to see what everybody's building.
Just want to say thank you for having me, and yeah, it was a pleasure to talk with you guys.
Same. Just glad to be on there.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, looks like Sam, it just dropped down to a listener, but he waved, so I'm going to assume he's thanking that as well.
All right, yeah, we'll take the wave as a thank you, and sorry if you dropped off, Sam. But so glad to have all of you on, and until next time, we will see everybody soon. Take care.
Bye, everyone. See you in the next one.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.